Good morning. My name is Chris Fox, and today we're talking with Shaelin from Shaelin Writes is the name of the channel, Shaelin?
Yeah, so Shaelin Writes is the name of my personal channel, and then I also make videos and manage Reedsy's YouTube channel, where the other half of this interview will be. Yeah.
The crest of these questions are coming from people like myself who didn't spend enough time in college, ended up dropping out and going to the real world, and now here we are, we're writers, and a lot of us are making a living doing this now, but we really don't know what we don't know. So there are no doubt a whole bunch of advantages to going to school as a writer, and so I kind of circled the wagons here and asked a lot of my friends who haven't been to college, what do you want to know? Like, is it still worth going? And this is what we came up with. So the first question, what do you feel the number one benefit of pursuing a creative writing degree is for an author?
Yeah, so for like a little bit of background, I'm in my last year of my BFA right now, so I'm just in my undergrad. I'm almost done. This is supposed to be my last semester, but I'm just doing my last year part-time, so it's going to take me just one extra semester to finish up my degree.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm just at the tail end of a BFA right now. So I would say, I mean, it's kind of the same benefit as studying anything in university, I think. Really compressed learning. You get access to mentors and opportunities and community and resources, which is super, super beneficial. And it's kind of like an apprenticeship type program, at least at my university and other programs I've talked to, where you're working pretty closely with mentors and in pretty small classes. So I think, it's kind of like psychology, but you would probably learn much faster and more efficiently if you studied in an academic environment, just because you'd be given an existing framework to work within that is kind of time tested and works well. And I think it's also, for some people, they just work so well in that environment. Like I work really well as a student. Other people don't. I know people who dropped out because it's just wasn't the best way for them to learn how to write. For some people, like being graded on something that was before like a hobby or a passion for you is really hard. For other people like myself, being graded and having deadlines works really well and makes me really push myself. So yeah, I'd say the main benefit would just be kind of like the framework and time that you're given to work within. Great mentors. Ideally, hopefully your university has great mentors. And yeah, it's just kind of you learn a lot very fast, I think, because instead of kind of being left to your own devices to figure everything out, you've got a pretty good system of mentors to work with.
That's definitely attractive to somebody like me, where the idea that somebody is around who has the answer I don't have. I'm great at self-learning, and Google is a wonderful tool, but there are often times where a mentor could maybe point me in the direction way faster, and that would save me time. So I could definitely see that as being a big benefit. Our second question is really broad, so feel free to address this as you'd like. What have you personally learned in school? Do any lessons stand out, things that an indie simply reading craft books might miss?
Yeah, I've been asked this before, like, what have you learned? And the short answer to that is how to be a better writer. I think kind of comparing it to learning from craft books, when you're in a writing degree, your first year of your degree is kind of what you would learn from craft books. Like your first year is reading a lot of essays, reading, stories and analyzing them, getting a lot of information thrown at you in lectures, learning kind of terms and stuff that you can use to describe stories. And then for the rest of your degree, you're still in some lectures and electives and stuff, but primarily the learning is workshop based. So you're doing the bulk of your learning in stories read by your peers and critiqued, and also reading your peers' stories. And so that kind of learning from craft books, that's like the foundation that you get to work from. And then all of the kind of like nuances of it come more from like the actual critiquing part. I would say that mostly everything that has made me improve as a writer has been from workshop, and kind of all the stuff that we learned foundationally. It was good for helping me have better language to like describe stories and stuff so that I could actually critique people's work better. But I think the thing that actually made me learn the most was actually like working with professors and having my work critiqued. So I'm just going to check my notes so I noted down some things because I tend to forget things. Yeah, that's this is going to sound kind of abstract. But I think the main thing that you kind of learn is like how to see a story, like how to see fiction. And some of that comes from like, like now I have a term to describe something that I have always been doing but never knew what it was. Like the more technical side. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of it is just kind of broadening kind of your general, like your skill set just from kind of like really rigorous critiquing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's hard to quantify specific things. I think that also kind of depends on different people who've improved in different ways.
It's a challenging question, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that as a whole, like basically every element of my writing improved. I mean, I can't look at things I wrote in the first year. They're just so bad. I can't read them.
We all have our trunk novel.
Ways, it's really, I mean, I started straight out of high school, so I was also young when I started my degree. And that also impacted probably the quality of the work I was writing at the time. But yeah, it's just looking at that old work, it's night and day. I don't know. It's just a kind of I've learned a lot of things. Like I would hope anyone going through university would learn a lot, but the main thing would just be having a really solid understanding of how story works.
Yeah, and I can see a lot of value in that. I mean, I harp on that constantly. It just sounds like it's a lot easier when you're immersed in it and other people can help you. Whereas for me, I've got to tease it out of books and watch videos and practice and write 20 plus novels. And, it sounds like you can really shortcut things with a creative writing degree.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of just like, I think a more efficient way of than trying to teach yourself, just because there's no like, there's no second guessing. You kind of just are kind of guided through a framework that works. So it's just, it kind of just removes the guesswork from learning, trying to teach yourself.
So next question on our list, I'm curious to hear the answer to this because I've heard a lot of different answers. What do you feel the benefit of an agent is to an author? Are you yourself agented or would you like to be?
So I'm not agented at the moment. I would like to be agented. I would like to pursue a traditional publishing or hybrid publishing route, but start with the traditional publishing route. And I mean, without an agent, if you're going the traditional publishing route, it's very hard to get your book read, seen. Even if you are able to get your book looked at, you probably don't have a good understanding of contract law, and you can walk yourself into some bad contracts without an agent. I think that the cut you pay your agent, you will probably be earning much more by having an agent negotiating to get more money for you than, so it kind of makes up for itself in terms of the cut that you would pay them. I think for a traditionally published author, I think it's just kind of a safety net so that you don't sign a contract with terms that you don't want, because you can walk yourself into some bad contracts. And I've heard some stories of some bad contracts. But I mean, of course, the main thing is just that it's pretty needed to sell your book in most cases as a traditionally published author. I mean, there's some exceptions. Like I think, poetry and really small presses, you might not need to go through an agent, but it's kind of the standard now that they won't really take you seriously, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes sense too. I like the idea that you've got an agent willing to be a jerk on your behalf so that you don't have to be the jerk. You can just be the nice author and the agent gets to go, rattle the cage and try and get you a better deal. Question number 4. Many writers are concerned about the length of time involved in obtaining a degree. How long is yours taken?
Yeah, time is definitely a huge concern. I mean, for me, I was starting my degree straight out of high school, so and I always knew I wanted to go to university. So basically my whole life I had those 4 years set aside. So it wasn't like, oh, I have to find the time for my degree. It was kind of just inherent. Like I was going to go to university at that time. So my program is a 4-year program. I'm going to do it in 4.5 years. I only know one person who's doing it in 1 year. No one really does it in 4, but that's not like a writing degree thing. Just in Canadian universities, people don't do degrees in 4 years. That doesn't really happen here. We take such a long time to do our degrees because people get slowed down by doing things like co-ops or just not wanting to take 5 classes at a time and die. So yeah, mine's going to take 5.5, which is fairly average and still faster than most people I know. Yeah, it's definitely a factor. If you don't already have that time set aside. For me, it was kind of just, I'd been planning to spend 4 years in university forever. Since that's what people do when they graduate high school. So yeah, I don't know about, I think in the US it's more standard that people just get it done in 4 years. I don't know why.
You'd be surprised.
It's so bad, but
you'd be surprised. At least in my personal circle, it's taken 10 years or more for a lot of my friends. And one of the more popular videos on my channel is called "The Time Is Going to Pass Anyway." So I think you have a really smart attitude because you are going to come out at the end of 5.5, 6 years, and you've got this degree done for the rest of your life. Whereas somebody who just like me went straight into the workforce, we just don't have the benefit of the same skill set because we didn't invest that time. So I would agree, that's smart. Question number 5, and this is a big one too. A lot of people are concerned about. How much is your education cost if you're comfortable sharing, and are there student loans involved?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's good to talk about the cost of a degree, especially when it's a degree like an arts degree where what it's going to do for your career is not the same as with some other degrees. So, for background, I'm Canadian. I go to a Canadian public university. So that definitely impacts my tuition costs. My degree will cost what 1 year of tuition would cost at some American universities. So my tuition is about $8,000 to $9,000 a year, depending on how many courses I take at the time. I was pretty lucky in that I got through my first 2 years almost entirely on scholarship. My first 2 years, I had an entrance-based scholarship where it was just calculated based on GPA, and it covered almost all of my tuition. And I ended up losing that. You need to maintain a certain GPA to keep that scholarship, and I lost it by a pretty small margin, which is too bad, but still got 2 years out of it, which was nice. And then I also had a bunch of little scholarships that I'd applied for, little ones from my high school district and stuff like that. That added up to basically entirely cover the first year and most of the second year. So yeah, scholarships are a huge thing. Apply for them because so many people, there are so many scholarships that no one even applies for, and a bunch of little ones can add up and be just as valuable as one larger scholarship. And then, so beyond that, I was lucky I don't have to take out any student loans just because I was only paying for 2 years after that. I had RESP saving account that had been going on for a long time, plus my own savings. So in the end, I didn't have to take out any loans, which is pretty nice. But I don't think that would have been the same if I was going to American university. I don't know how I would have done that if I lived in the States, if I'm being honest.
It varies from state to state here. So we have what are called junior colleges, and they're very inexpensive. In California, it's about $1,000 a semester to go to a junior college. So there's definitely a price there, but you can only go through about 2 years of classes and you can't get a 4-year degree, but it defrays the cost of the big universities quite a bit.
Okay, yeah. Definitely student loans. I know the UK has a really good student loan system. So it's not the end of the world. I know people who've gone through the student loan route to pay. I know some places where a certain amount of your student loans can be forgiven. Even I don't know. There's good ways to go through it. I luckily didn't have to deal with that though.
So the next question is probably going to be the hardest, or at least the most hard hitting, I guess. Do you feel that indie books in general have a lower level of quality than a traditionally published book? And I put a note from the interviewer. I do think that Trad Pub is generally higher in quality on average. I'm not saying there can't be amazing indie books, but that's my stance. Anyway, I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that. I think the reason is just because you have a much wider spectrum with indie books, where you have a lot of indie books that have gone through kind of the same treatment as a traditionally published book. They've gone through the editing, they've gone through the design, they've gone through that time. And you might not notice a difference, probably wouldn't notice a difference in quality, but then you also have a lot of indie books where people necessarily didn't put in the time and maybe the book never saw an editor. And so I think it's just kind of a wider spectrum because some people might not, it might not matter to them. They might just they're like, I wrote a book, I don't know what to do with it. Here it is. They might not know how to work with that. So I think that there are still plenty of indie books that are completely comparable. I think there's just kind of this wider range that might kind of bring down, the average quality if you were actually calculating it.
Agreed. So probably the last of the hard questions. Are you going to pursue an MFA? I know you've been in school for 5.5 years now. Do you see a benefit of hitting an MFA as opposed to just the BFA?
Yeah, MFAs. I have a complicated relationship with MFAs. So I do want to do an MFA at some point. My thoughts on this have changed a lot. I used to plan to go straight into my MFA. And then I realized that I was going to graduate. I wasn't going to graduate at the four-year mark. I was going to graduate in 4.5, which meant I would have to take half a year off anyways because my MFA would start in September. So I would have to take that January to September off. And then I thought, well, actually, maybe I need a bit more time off because at this point I've been straight in school without a break since I was 5 years old. So maybe I should take 1 extra year off. And I kind of realized that I think the reason why I was I do want to do an MFA. That is something I want to do with my life. But I think part of the reason why I wanted to do an MFA right away, and a lot of people I know, my whole cohort, a lot of people are having this experience, is just not knowing what you're going to do after graduation. So you kind of just go, well, I guess I'll do an MFA because school I know what that is, and it will be something to do with the next 2 years of my life when I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And so I kind of felt that maybe I was just using an MFA to procrastinate getting out of school because I really like being in school and I like being a student. I would be a student for my whole life if I could. And so I was like, okay, I think what I need to do is take more time off before my MFA because I talked to a lot of MFA students and a lot of them said, basically, if you're coming straight out of your bachelor's degree, you're probably a little burned out, and it's better you're only going to do your MFA once in your life, do it at a time where you're going to get the most out of it and you're actually going to really benefit from it instead of just doing it straight out of your bachelor's degree, just because you don't know what else you're going to do. So I'm definitely would like to, but I think I'm just going to, wait until I feel like I really have the money, first of all, to do it, the energy to do it, and would get the most out of it. I think, my reason for doing an MFA is really just, I think it's kind of the final step in improving my craft that I would like to take. Mm-hmm. But also, with writing, you can teach at the university level with a master's degree. You don't need a PhD. PhDs for writing don't really exist. Some people have them, but it's really, really rare. Most of my professors and most writing professors only have an MFA. So I used to think that maybe at some point I would like to teach. And so in that case, I would need an MFA. So that's kind of one other reason why I'd really like to do that.
Yeah, great answer. Great answer. I think taking a break is smart. Okay, so last 2 questions are very interesting. Is it true that there are leprechauns in Canada?
I would need to see proof of Canadian citizenship to tell you about that. No, but it's a vast country, so you never know.
Maybe they're up there somewhere. And then finally, the last question, which I thought was good, was how do you pronounce your name? It's lovely.
Okay, yeah, so my name, My name has a story behind it. I don't know if it's worth getting into that now, but
I would love to hear it.
basically, my parents had a disagreement on what to name me. My dad wanted to name me. It's so terrible. I'm so glad he didn't win this. He wanted to name me after a town in Washington, which is called Chehalis. And my mom was like, no. Oh, God, no. We're not naming her that. And so she was like, how about Shay instead? But then they thought Shay was too short. And so they just tacked Lynn on and made Shaelin. So yeah, it's just pronounced Shaelin, kind of exactly like it looks, I guess. Yeah, that's the story of how my parents couldn't agree on a name, and so they just made one up.
I love it. I love it. So where can people find you if they want to check out more about you and your writing journey?
Yeah, so my personal platforms are, my YouTube channel is Shaelin Writes. I try to post once a week there, but sometimes university gets in my way and that doesn't happen. But I do have a lot of content at the moment that I've pre-filmed, so yeah, I'm pretty excited about some of what I'm going to be doing there. The rest of my platforms, I mean, I have them. I have Twitter. I don't use it that often, if I'm being honest. But yeah, that's my main hub of my platform. And then for consistent videos for me, so the videos I make on my own channel are usually kind of like craft-based tutorials or kind of just like personal writing related discussions. And then I also make videos twice a week on Rizzy's YouTube channel. Those are a bit more, there's more of a range, so I talk more about publishing and editing and stuff like that. And so yeah, that's where also your half of the interview will be.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to answer these questions. I'll be posting it on my channel. I'll let you know when the link goes live.
Great, thank you. It's great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks.